Welcome to Do It with Jason. Let's talk about my eBay solar system. Alright, first let's look at the solar panels I got outside. On the main solar array, I have 6 175 watt HQST solar panels. The first two are wired in series. The second pair, third and fourth, are in series, and the fifth and sixth are wired in series. Those three pairs are then wired in parallel and run through a 6-gauge wire into the house. I then have those mounted on two of the low profile Unistrut bars, and then just some simple bolts and then brackets you can get right on eBay that clamp them down, mounted to just your simple 2x4 rack that is optimized for summertime to get the most power, because that's what I'm using the most with air conditioners. And from there, I'm testing a few other solar panels. I have two 210 watt new something panels. Those two are wired in series, and they have an inline diode plugged in on the positive side, and those are just on a super simple, cheap PVC mount that is adjustable and just held on with zip ties. It's worked perfectly fine. Again, it's just for testing, but it's nice because I can move these around and do a lot of different testing with them. On the other temporary mount, I have two 190 watt HQST solar panels. Those two are also wired in series, and the positive has a diode on that as well. And those two pairs are actually wired in parallel to each other because their working voltage is about the same. It works out fine. I have them positioned so that the HQST panels will get the sun early in the morning, and the new power ones will get the most power later in the day. Those are running into the house onto a separate solar controller, which we can go through now. So that main solar array of the 6 panels is coming into this EP Ever 40 amp solar controller. This solar controller has been working out great. I've had it for almost a year now. I've had zero issues with it. The terminals are very high quality. It has a lot of different options for settings for different battery types and generator relays, so to switch on and off. A lot of different monitoring. Very, very good unit, and it's also very efficient. So I do recommend these. And this is just a 40 amp. The two test solar arrays that I have are coming into a Renogy 40 amp controller. This one I'm not as big of a fan of. I had two of the terminals break on me, just the screws stripped right out. Easy fix, but definitely a lower quality solar controller. Efficiency wise, seems to be about the same, but definitely seems to have a little less quality in that controller. So both these solar controllers are going to my battery bank. Yes, I know lithium's better, but for the price I got these for, I couldn't pass them up. So I have 4 12 volt 200 amp hour Renogy sealed lead acid batteries, and then I have 2 of them in series, and then the 2 pairs in parallel. And those are all going to a 100 amp fuse in between the solar controller and the batteries, which is also going to go into the inverter. This is the third inverter that I'm on. This is so much better than the other inverters that I've used. The first one I had was the Reliable brand. It was not reliable. It blew a MOSFET with half the wattage that it was rated for. Not a fan. And then I had one of the pure sine wave Chinese inverter. Got your lugs on it. This is a 3000 watt. This one worked perfectly fine. Didn't have any issues with it. But I wanted something a little bit more powerful, and I also wanted something that can do split phase. This is only single phase output. So I ended up going with a power jack. There's not a whole lot of information on these. What I will say is I've had this for over a year, and it is awesome. It's an 8000 watt, low frequency, split phase. It has a 32,000 peak. So that's any of your surges and stuff, whether you got appliances that have a compressor or a heater that has a really big surge right out the gate. This can easily cover that. And from my inverter, I have two of these Spartan 50 amp automatic transfer switches. The purpose of this is you can create different settings that monitor the battery voltage to switch between grid power and solar power. And the reason I went with this different setup is I can run two different circuits and have one be my emergency loads and my other ones be kind of my extra circuits. So if my batteries start to get low, one of the automatic transfer switches will switch to grid power and not drain my battery, while my emergency will still stay on my battery. So if I ever was in a situation where I was out of power, and say it was nighttime or I wasn't getting any sun or it was a storm or something, my batteries were starting to drain down, to make my emergency system, which is going to have my refrigerator, my freezer, and stuff on it, to make the battery last longer for those, that automatic transfer switch will turn off first to save battery for the emergency system. Those are going to a sub panel, and then the sub panel is feeding all of the different outlets or anything that I'm running off this unit. I haven't had any issues so far. Everything's been working out really well. Definitely going to be upgrading to lithium batteries at some point in time once you start getting a lot of loads on it. AGM batteries definitely have that voltage drop when you get a lot of draw and current taken out of them. So that's on the list. Overall, this system works really well, and it didn't cost me a whole lot of money. So I mean, I can run a mini split AC unit, my refrigerator, a freezer chest, fans, lights, pretty much a majority of my house when I have full sun on all of my panels and some power in the batteries. Absolutely no problem. It works perfect. And then you might be wondering about this little box here. This is the Emporia monitoring system. You can get this, really doesn't have anything to do with the solar. This is really just used for my monitoring of this whole system. So I can basically just check my phone whenever I can see the power coming out of my inverter, whether the automatic transfer switches are feeding from the grid or feeding from the inverter, making sure my outputs and my sub panel, my main panel are all going. If there's a grid power outage or anything, I can see all that. My wireless router is on battery backup as well, so as long as internet is still functioning, I'll be able to access this from anywhere, even if the power does go out in my house. And then finally, just a little addition to all of this, I do have a 24 volt to 12 volt step down, and then I have a small little 12 volt system too. I have a lot of little lighting and some charging stations around the house that you can use for USB or 12 volt that are much more efficient, so I don't have to have the efficiency loss of an inverter if I did need to run something else. One last thing about this inverter is it does have an AC charger as well, so I can actually just plug in a generator or any outlet really to anything, and this inverter will charge my batteries as well if for some reason no solar for a long period of time and I want to top off my batteries or anything. This is also a charger as well. Thanks for watching. Give me a like, subscribe, comment down below, and I'll see you next time.